Joe Pesci is an Academy Award-winning actor who starred in such great motion pictures as Goodfellas and Raging Bull. His newest film is Lethal Weapon 4. It's in theaters now, and it's a pleasure to welcome Joe back to CBS. Thanks for coming on. You don't do this very often, and I'm honored that you come here to visit us.
Well, I like doing your show.
Thank you. Now, you and Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in this picture are together. Now, this is the third time around, huh?
For me, yes.
Yeah. And I understand that Gibson is a pretty good practical joker.
Very good practical joker.
Can you give me an example of what he's done in the past? I think that he and who was the other fellow? Danny Glover teamed up on you one time, didn't they? Or no, Chris Rock. Chris Rock and
Mel did this last time. I was doing a scene, and I always keep the cigar off the set. And after I do the scene, I come back, I pick up the cigar, and I smoke it. And Mel and Chris were standing there, and he said, "How's that cigar taste?" Which is not a strange question because we both smoke cigars a lot and we trade cigars.
Okay,
so
compare
he'll say,
flavor.
"How's that one, right?
Yeah.
Is that a good one?" Something like that. So I said, "It's all right." I said, "It's not as good as the other one we smoked." You know, he said, "A little bitter," and I said, "No, it's just not as good as the other one." He said, "You think this might be the reason?" And he holds up a Polaroid of a cigar stuck up a butt. And I said, "There's no way that's my cigar." And because there's just no way they could get into my stash. I know, you know. But it was a good try. I just think that Mel likes to walk around with cigars up his butt.
Now, and I'm not asking you what you will do, but do you retaliate along the way? Do you have a comeback now and again?
It depends on the seriousness of the prank. Because you know, they get out of hand. I'm not one who can take it. I don't take it very well. So it depends on, you know, how extreme it is.
Gotcha.
Something, you know, sometimes I can't take it. So I avoid trying to do it back to someone, or so that it doesn't go too far. You know.
You know, when a picture comes out, such as the one that you're doing now with Mel and Danny, there's a lot of competition for audience right now, like this big Armageddon, this huge, or supposedly huge picture opened up. I mean, is it tough to release and I know you have no control over this, but when a picture's released in the midst of a lot of competition?
Yeah. Well, I don't like, you know, like you said, I don't have anything to do with that, and I certainly don't even worry about it anymore. I mean, because, you know, the big companies that do all the marketing, I mean, they have such great marketing staffs, they know what they're doing. Right. And sometimes if it seems like it's a bad choice or a bad time, it's because it's the only time that they really can, that they figure out, you know.
The last time you were here, we talked a little bit about Raging Bull, and you mentioned in passing that you had done some sparring with Roberto Duran, and I didn't ask you about that, and I should have. Was that frightening for you? Because you're not a professional fighter, and you got to spar with this guy, and you get to know the moves. How tough was that?
Well, you know, at the time I was younger, crazier, and I'm not thinking too clearly. I was Bob De Niro and I were doing a lot of boxing at the time before the movie and practicing, and you get to think you're a little good, a little cocky.
I'm going to give this guy a shot, huh?
And I was in good shape, and we were friendly with Roberto. And I knew I was going to go down and watch him spar, and he was sparring, and I had told him that I wanted to get in the ring with him a little bit and just fool around, you know. And I thought it was a good idea. I brought a little film crew, 16 millimeter crew, a couple of friends of mine. And when I got in the ring, I realized what a bad decision I made. Because it was frightening. There was a point where I really got scared. I did, because even if you get a little lucky and you make a good move on him, there's a lot of people around, you embarrass the guy, you know, and he can come at you. But what he did was bull me with his body. Do you know what I mean? He kept bullying me with his body. And I was bruised for about a month. Just from that. He was about 180 pounds.
Although in that situation, even though he was bullying you, he probably would never hurt you.
No, he wouldn't. He wasn't trying to hurt me at all. He was making fun, you know, and telling me, try to hit me. And the guy is a master at slipping punches. I mean, that was his forte, really. And I couldn't hit him. And every time I'd miss him, he'd hit me with his shoulder or something, or move his body. And a couple of times I do a couple of fast little parries against him or something, and he went, "Oh, and come back and say, Roberto, I'm only kidding. Come on, it's me. And I was running around the ring. So when I looked at the film with my friend, I said, just edit out all that me running around stuff.
Get that out of there. Yeah.
Just use the good stuff where I look good, you know.
You know, it's interesting that people know you for the tough roles you've played, like Raging Bull and like Goodfellas, which was, you know, a milestone motion picture in your career and in a lot of other careers. Yet you've done some funny stuff. My Cousin Vinny was a very funny film. When fans see you on the street, how do they react to the characters you play? Do they tend to react to the heavy or to the comedy?
It depends on the movie that they saw last.
Yeah, okay.
And usually I can tell which one they saw last by how they approach me. If it's a Joe, how's those Utes? I know they saw My Cousin Vinny, or hey, okay, Joe, whoa, okay. And they'll do that, and then if they saw one of their heavier roles, it's hey, Mr. Pesci, how you doing?
Mr. Pesci.
And then it's Mr. Pesci, how you doing, you know?
And we didn't talk much about, you grew up in Newark, across
Yes.
the river from New York, right?
Oh, I was born in Newark, New Jersey, and I lived there till I maybe about 11 years old. And then I moved to Belleville, New Jersey.
your dad was a blue-collar worker there, a working man?
Oh, my father was a working dog. He loved to work. He had a few jobs. He drove a forklift truck for General Motors Chevrolet division for years, and he used to tend bar nights, and if he could get extra work at Budweiser, he used to go there when they needed, you know, somebody. So he was a workaholic.
Was it the love of work or the love of supporting his family?
It was the love of trying to get his family out of a certain neighborhood and into better neighborhoods all the time. That's what it was.
And what would he say to you about your future when you were a lad going to school? Would he stress education to you?
Well, he stressed education, but not so much the education as, I mean, he didn't think he had a genius on his hands with me.
I understand that, but all fathers want for their sons and daughters better than what they had. Sure.
Right. Well, the thing he worried about more than anything was a trade. He always thought about trades. In other words, he started me off acting and singing and dancing in Marie Mosier's school of acting, singing, and dancing when I was about 5 years old. So I was getting trained that way, and I was performing and going along. But he always said, you know, you can't take anything for granted, and if it doesn't work out with show business, or your acting, or singing, or anything like that, you should learn something else.
Have a trade, fallback position.
Well, then he started me playing the guitar at 9 years old, so I would learn some music, some extra music, you know. Then he wanted me to become a barber and have that trade. Then he got me a civil service job in the post office. He said, civil service is a good job to have.
Benefits.
So I worked in the post office. I was a mail carrier, a mail sorter, and I worked on the docks, unloading the job, and I did it all. And things like that, those kind of trade things that you would never starve. You could always feed your family and feed yourself.
But he did support singing and dancing
that he really wanted.
and acting. He wanted that.
He wanted that for me. He thought I had some talent. Yes.
And when you were a kid, what was on television?
Well, because he worked so many jobs, we were one of the first families in our neighborhood to get a TV. It was, you know, those little ones.
7 inches.
7 inches, right. And the color was a big orange thing that you put in front of it.
That's
Once
right.
that came
That's
along,
right.
you remember that?
That's right.
Well, the first things I remember were...
They're waving me to a commercial.
Okay.
Excuse my interruption. We'll continue here with Joe Pesci, who's currently starring along with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon 4. The toll-free is up and running, and we'll be right back after this short break. With Joe Pesci, here's Jeff on the toll-free in St. Clair, Missouri. Hi, Jeff, and welcome to CBS Late Night. Hello.
How are you tonight, Tom?
I'm fine, Jeff. I hope you are, too.
I'm doing fine, thank
Good.
you. How are you, Joe?
Fine, how are you, Jeff?
Oh, I'm doing fine, thanks.
Now that that's out of the way, Jeff, can we get on to it, please?
Yeah, my question is, Joe, have you ever really met any tough guys like you play in the movies, and what are they like? Like you base your characters on?
Well, you know, sometimes when we're doing research, they'd introduce us to certain people, and they would tell us that they were somebody, but naturally you never know. I find that a lot of them would say they were somebody when they weren't. I don't think a real tough guy or somebody like that would say who they were,
Right.
or come out like that. And when I worked in nightclubs when I was younger, I did meet a lot of neighborhood guys like that. And they were actually, in the nightclubs, they were very nice to us. They liked entertainers. They would give us good tips and buy us drinks. And so it was, they were okay with us.
Well, a tough guy is never really a tough guy in that kind of a situation, a
Right.
nightclub situation, you know, that kind of a setting. Yeah.
Right. Well, you never knew anybody that was notorious or anything like that? Anybody that we would know of?
My brother was notorious. He used to beat me up all the time. He was pretty tough.
Jeff, I'm glad you called, and I hope you had a happy 4th.
Thanks for your time, Tom.
Okay, young man, take care. The TV, when you got the first little 7-inch, what was on television? The Horn and Hardart Children's Hour, maybe?
That's right,
Yep.
the Horn and Hardart Children Hour, and the Ted Mack Show.
Yep.
We were talking
Yep.
about that. And the serials used to come on. Remember the serials,
sure.
the Scorpion?
Yep.
And
Yep. The Phantom was on.
and the Wolfman.
Yep.
I used to love them. I couldn't wait to watch
It was
them.
wonderful. Now, you spent the time, earlier in your career, you spent some time in music.
Yeah.
You wound up with Joey D and the Starlighters, and they had a big hit record, as I recall.
They had a couple of hit records. I mean, they had the Peppermint Twist,
Yep,
and they had
huge
Hey
record.
Let's Twist, and probably something else that I'm forgetting. But I was just in the road band playing. I mean, I wasn't part of the upfront stuff.
But you mentioned your father brought you a guitar. Were you a guitar man?
Yes, I played guitar in the road band with Sam Taylor Jr.
And tell me about the road. What happens on the road when you're a young kid, when you're with a hot group like the Starlighters? They got all these hit records, and there are all those adoring fans out there in the seats.
Well, I didn't have access to the adoring fans. I was in the band, but it was a lot of fun, and it was interesting. It was a big learning experience, I think. You know, it really was.
What'd you learn?
I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot of things about who to bother with and who not to bother with on the road. Certain types of people, you know. I mean, it's just growing up things. You know, I think you learn a lot faster when you're on the road and you're around people that are drinking and you're young. You get to see people at their worst all the time. So you learn a lot. You learn fast. You know, who's not nice, who's full
Right.
of it, who you know what I mean? You learn a
And
lot
when
of
you
things.
saw people drinking, like I remember this when I was a kid. I wasn't on the road, but I had moved from my father's house. I was working down south in television, you know, for no money, but just because I loved television so much. And like yourself, I tended to not go with those who were the drinkers because they turned into people that I didn't want to be around.
Exactly.
And it kept me away from drinking, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, I was never a big drinker, but I did get into drugs for a while with the bands and stuff like that, which I'm not thrilled about. But
No, but how could you not? I mean, almost every young musician sees
it's a
that.
terrible thing. I mean, you don't realize what you're doing. I mean, you really don't. When you're young and you're doing that stuff, you just don't realize what you're getting into.
No, because you're immortal then, Joe.
Yeah. I'm just so sorry I ever did. Physically for myself.
I
mean,
understand.
And mentally.
I understand. So your first picture in the 70s, was it Death Collector?
Death Collector.
First picture?
Yes, that was the first picture I...
And you played a gangster type, huh?
I played a neighborhood tough, you know, something like that. I don't know if it was really gangsters. They were just neighborhood guys, sort of like Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, you know.
Okay.
Wannabes, stuff like that.
And in that picture, you would have a credit as a writer, and I was told to ask you about a line involving the word sneakers.
Sneakers, wow.
Don't let me catch you wearing sneakers.
Oh, yeah, I did. I said, do me a favor, don't wear sneakers, I said to Bobby Alto. It was such a strange kind of a thing because they thought they were going to do well because they made a score, they made some money, and he was telling his friend Bobby.
This is in the picture, you and the guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he was telling him, you know, we're going to be doing great now, you know, we're going to be dressing better,
Better
we're
cars.
going better cars, we're going to go to better places. And he says, yeah, and he says, so I wanted to tell you, he says, yeah, what? I said, do me a favor. He said, anything, I'll do anything for you. And I said, don't wear sneakers anymore. And he said, okay. Never asking why, but like wondering, why can't I wear sneakers?
Yeah.
But it was just a thing like, you get to a point where you don't wear sneakers anymore when you're that type in that neighborhood and things like that.
Yeah,
You
but I was
stop
told
wearing
that you would write some of this dialogue or make it up as you went along.
We
in this
did,
picture.
yes, we
Improvised
did.
it.
We improvised a lot and wrote. Ralph DeVito, who's my friend who wrote it and directed it, you know, would let us do these things, and it was helpful to me to learn and get this experience to be able to create like that. you know. And then when I worked with Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro, it was a lot. It was so easy for me to get into that, and and that's what they wanted. They liked that. You know?
So how was your career after that first picture? Did the offers come rolling in?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So much so that you went back to New York, huh?
Yeah, I came out to Hollywood. I couldn't get an agent. I couldn't get arrested doing any. Well, I think I could have got arrested.
Yeah.
I really couldn't do well at all. I mean, I tried so hard, and I did some bit parts, you know, in Kojaks and things like that. You know, I'd go up for things and just wind up with extra work and try to get an extra line here or there. I just couldn't do anything.
It's a tough business, tough thing to break into.
You have to really be lucky. I mean, I consider myself very lucky. I think not only do you have to be lucky, I mean, you have to be prepared so that if you do get a chance, at least
You're ready.
you're ready, you know? I mean, it doesn't help you to get lucky and you're not prepared.
That's
you're
right.
dead, because then you're stuck.
But you went back to New York and you went to work in a legendary restaurant,
Right,
Amici's,
Amici's,
up
right.
in the Bronx. I've been in that
Yes.
restaurant. It's a
Great.
treasure. What was your job there?
My job was managing the place. I was running it, and for a while, for a short time, and when we were trying to build it up, my boss got me a guitar. I would sing nights around the tables and everything. That stopped quick because a couple of fights broke out, and I wanted to smack people with the guitar. So I think that's funny, huh? Did you ever get hit with a guitar? They hurt. It's not the wood so much; it's the strings that hurt when they cut.
And you're working in Amici's one night, and you get a phone call, I read.
Right. Well, I got a phone call in the morning. I was doing something, and I came back to the restaurant. I was out doing something else. I come back to the restaurant, and one of the guys that worked for me said, you got a phone call from Robert De Niro. He said, the number's over there on the bar. And I said, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Drop dead the first chance you get. You know, because I thought somebody was, they used to call me the actor, and they had
Yeah.
all these nicknames for me, so I thought somebody was just pulling my legs. But when I looked at the number, I, you know, just sidled over to the bar, just take a little peek at it without them knowing I was looking. I noticed that the area code was the correct area code for Los Angeles, and the dope that told me didn't have the brains to know that, so I said, this is real.
Uh-huh.
So I went upstairs and I called right away. And it was, I think, United Artists Studio. And I said, yes, can I speak to Robert De Niro, please? And he said, who's calling? I said, Joe Pesci. Just a minute. She comes back on the phone. She says, he's not in right now. And I said, yeah, well, I figured that. Just tell him Joe Pesci called. And I hung up. I figured somebody was just...
Prank or whatever.
Yeah, and then I went to sleep, and the phone woke me up, and a woman on the phone says, I have a call. Is this Mr. Pesci? I said, yeah, Robert De Niro calling. I said, oh, good. She gets on the phone and here, hello? I said, hello? He says, yeah, Joe? Joe Pesci? I said, yeah. He says, this is Bob De Niro. I said, yeah. And he said, is this really Joe Pesci? He says, this is really Bob De Niro. I said, this is really Joe Pesci. And what can I do for you? You know, he says, the actor? I said, well, I don't act anymore. I was acting, and I just give it all up. He said, you were in Death Collector, right? I said, yes. He said, listen, Martin Scorsese and I saw you in this thing. I'd like to talk to you about being in this movie that we're going to do together. And I said, well, I don't work anymore. I said, unless it's really a real big part where I could, you know, go one-on-one with you and I could really get out there and show my stuff. I said, I don't think that you should give it to someone who's a working actor that'll really appreciate it. And he said, no. He said, well, can I talk to you about it? I said, well, yes. I said, but I can't come to California. I said, I'm running a restaurant. You know, he said, oh, we'll come there. I said, okay. Sunday, 5 o'clock, dinner. Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese, Sis Corman, the casting director, and her husband, come and have dinner with my boss and I and his wife. They loved it, so, you know. Yeah. And we had this dinner, and they were talking about all this this Raging Bull stuff and everything, and telling me how good the part was and how good they thought I was, and would I just read. And so I said, no, no, no. And then my boss said, I think you should go read for it. So I said, okay. And I went and read, and we read for a few days and finally worked.
In other words, you got lucky.
I mean, this is extremely lucky.
But
you're talking.
you were prepared.
But I was prepared.
Yes, you were.
I was prepared.
Let me do a fast break here. We're chatting with Joe Pesci, one of the stars of Lethal Weapon 4. We'll be right back after these messages. with Joe Pesci. You know, I've got these fellows coming on to talk about this this news thing at CNN. I don't know if you heard about that, where they had to retract the story. Do you watch news a lot? Do you trust what you see on television news, what you read in the papers?
Not all the time. I mean, I think it gets too crazy. It's much too crazy, the news. I'm a channel flipper.
Right.
I flip
Surf,
channels
okay.
like crazy. So I hear a little bit about everything, and I keep going. Unless, you know, something really stands out.
Well, like when this thing came out, and I'm not asking you for an opinion on
Right.
Bill Clinton and this
Right.
Monica Lewinsky, but when that
Right.
thing, remember, it was everywhere when it came. Did you follow that?
I follow. I mean, you hear it for a while, and then I start laughing about it because it's like, it's so crazy. It has nothing to do with his job. I don't care what he does. I don't. I'm just amazed that people care what he does, and his spare time.
Yeah, but they do.
Well, I mean, well, they are. We were talking about that because people want to know what you do as a celebrity
Right.
when you're not working and doing your job. I understand that. But something that becomes very personal. He says he didn't, fine, he didn't.
And in your life, you know, you're a known figure. You're a movie star.
Right.
Do you often wonder why people are so taken with what you do for a living? You know, a celebrity. You know, they want pictures of you at social events, or they want a map to find out where you live. I mean, do you ever wonder what it is about celebrities? I mean, would you get on a bus and drive through Beverly Hills looking at people's houses because they were movie stars? Do you ever wonder why people do that?
I don't know. I mean, I never went that far, but when I was younger, I mean, because of my interest in the business, I always had a big interest
Right.
in anyone who was a celebrity or movie star type. But and the average person I can see being a little taken because they're surprised to see you where they don't expect to see you. That I can understand. But it's like a doctor. When a doctor comes into a room and everybody finds out, well, what kind of a doctor is he? And the minute he gives up what kind of a doctor he is, someone's got a pain or something or a question they're going to ask him about. You know, doctors seem to have the same problem we have as celebrities or actors or something. But in general, we don't go into a room at a social event and ask other people what they're doing or how's your job. What are you doing next? That's a big question. What are you
Right,
doing next?
right.
What are you doing now?
Yeah. Or what are you
I'm
doing?
I'm having a
What are you
drink.
doing here?
What are you doing?
You know, I get it all the time. Why aren't you in New York? Well, because I don't live in New York. I work in Los Angeles.
Well, if I go to church, people turn around and stare.
Pesci goes to church?
Well, I go to church when there's no one around. I go in the afternoon.
Really?
I'll go in the afternoon when I see nobody there. I'll just walk in and just relax and sit there a while and have my little conversations with our Lord. But, I mean, I can't go in there on Sunday. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. I feel so awkward.
I understand.
I feel terrible.
I understand.
I remember Al Pacino and I went to see Frank Sinatra one day at Carnegie Hall. And we sat in the 6th row. We had nice seats. We went, we sat down, and Buddy Rich was playing first. He was the opening
sure.
act. And before you know it, people were going. And Sinatra sent us, these three big guys came and went, you and you. We came out and said, Frank says, what are you trying to do? Ruin the show? Get upstairs in the box. He'll talk to you later. And that was it. We couldn't sit there.
It is always a joy to see you in that chair. Thanks for coming over. I'm honored that you do our show, Joe.
Thank you. I wish you were still going to do it.
Well, we'll be here till the end of the year. Maybe you'll come back one more time.
Okay. It's nice seeing you, Tommy.
It's nice to see you, sir.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure, Mr.
Thanks.
P. Joe Pesci is the guest. Lethal Weapon 4 is the picture. It's in theaters now. Next, John Leo and Marshall Loeb and Strange Goings On at CNN and Time Magazine after this timeout.